The Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equally and deserve basic rights. It also separates the 13 colonies from Britain. The Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4, 1776 in Philadelphia, which is now celebrated yearly in America as Independence Day. This document has 3 parts. There's the preamble, the charges against King George III, and the conclusion. The preamble is a summary of the laws of the government. The charges are listing and describing the principles violated by the king, and the conclusion discusses the duty of the document, sacrifice, etc., to achieve the goals of creating the Declaration. Though it's widely thought that the Declaration was the work of Congress as a whole, Thomas Jefferson was the principal author. Though the Declaration is now perfected and well known, it hasn't always been. Jefferson wrote the first draft, but after writing it, the rest of the committee ended up making 86 changes to it, shortening it by about 1/4 of its length. Philosopher John Locke's ideas contributed a great deal to inspiring this document. Today, the authentic original Declaration of Independence can be found on display at the National Archives and Records Administration in Washington, D.C.
No one would have expected a revolution a few years prior. The colonies in the United States were not yet unified, nor were they struggling for freedom. Resources were prosperous, and they were not in an economic crisis, though the colonists who described themselves as English subjects soon changed their mind when they were unfairly taxed, washed over like children, and ignored. Religious issues arose as well. These are a few events that led to the Declaration of Independence. The Stamp Act imposed a new tax on all colonists and required them to pay a tax on every piece of printed paper they used. Common printed papers during the time included legal documents, licenses, newspapers, and other publications. Even playing cards were taxed. The money collected by the Stamp Act was to be used to help pay the cost of defending the frontier near the Appalachian Mountains. This upset the colonists because it was viewed as a direct attempt by England to raise money without discussing the act with colonial legislators. After the colonists went through taxation without representation, the Boston Tea Party occurred because the colonists felt they had no say in Parliament. It had been estimated that American colonists drank 1.2 million pounds of tea each year. This made Britain notice that they could make a lucrative amount of money on the tea trade imported to the colonies. So the British tea became highly priced. In response, the colonies smuggled tea from the Dutch. This illegal trade violated the Navigation Acts that had been set. On the night of December 16th, Samuel Adams and the group Sons of Liberty boarded 3 ships on the Boston harbor and threw 342 chests of tea overboard. In 1770, the Boston Massacre occurred. This was a small preview to the Revolution. Though before the massacre, the Stamp Act was repealed, but a declaratory act was determined. The act stated that Parliament could bind the colonies in all cases whatsoever. After this statement, there was most definitely tension between the colonists and British. After the Townshend duties were set, British officials living in the colonies were scared for their lives. In reaction, the Parliament's minister ordered 4 regiments to be sent to Boston. This infuriated the colonists as well. On March 5th, a mob of 60 angry townspeople attacked the guards at the Customs House, aka the Boston Massacre. The British fired bullets and killed a few men, as well as slaves that were fighting with the townspeople.
There were many people that were involved in making the Declaration of Independence. There were 56 people in total. One of the most important people was Thomas Jefferson. He was a Virginia statesman who drafted the Declaration of Independence. John Adams also had an important role in the Declaration. He was a Massachusetts delegate at the Continental Congress, and he assisted Jefferson with revisions of the Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Franklin was one of the Pennsylvania delegates at Continental Congress. He assisted Jefferson with the revisions of the Declaration as well. Some fun facts about the people who signed the Declaration of Independence were the largest, most famous signature is from John Hancock. He was the president of the Continental Congress. The youngest person to sign the Declaration was Edward Rutledge, and he was 26. The oldest was Benjamin Franklin at 70. 2 future presidents signed the Declaration, including John Adams and Thomas Jefferson.
The biggest impact the Declaration of Independence had was bringing our country together and creating what we know today as the United States of America. Not only did the Declaration create the United States, but it was written to protect our rights as humans. The Emancipation Proclamation is one of the many events that was created partially because of the Declaration. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforward shall be free. This was inspired by the Declaration because the Declaration stated that all men are created equal. Most people still read it as all men are created equal except for African Americans, but Abraham Lincoln interpreted the Declaration how it was written, that all men, no matter skin color, religion, etc., are equal. And he pushed towards the equality of all men and later issued the Emancipation Proclamation that gave black citizens their freedom. The statement in the Declaration that all men are created equal is one of the most impactful statements in the Declaration. Not only did it free the black slaves, but it gave women equal rights. Even today, that statement is still helping people gain their equality. The Declaration of Independence also had a major impact on the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is very similar to what the Declaration states, but wrote them more or less to be laws. It took the statements of the Declaration and enforced them to make our country a better, more fair place. The Declaration of Independence affected other nations by making them question their own government. They liked what we did with our country and wanted the same for theirs. It even caused other countries to make their own laws, giving people more rights. For example, the French Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens was influenced by our Declaration. Not only was the Declaration impactful for the U.S., but for our surrounding nations as well.